So why are we talking about drugs when this is supposed to be a class on nutrition? Well, you put this in your body, don't you? Which means it'll have an effect on your body and the effect on the way you, as your body use and absorb nutrition, how much it needs, affect the way you need nutrition. So it's still relevant, especially especially since when people think of drugs, they may be thinking of prescription, but there are over-the-counter and herbal preparations that people don't think of as drugs, but they are. Anything that affects your body, makes changes to your body, is a drug. Recreational drugs, some people think because it's outside of mealtime, then it's not food, but it absolutely does affect nutrition. Illicit drugs too. Just because you don't want to talk about it doesn't mean it's not affecting your nutritional needs. But this lecture is about addiction in general, and this is the definition. If somebody stops you in the middle of the street and asks you what's your definition of addiction, it's one of those words where you say, well, I know what it is, but it's hard for me to describe it, or I'll know it when I see it. Are you sure? Here is the official definition, but when people think of addiction, they're usually thinking of substance addiction, like things you put into your body. But there's another kind of addiction called process addictions, is what you do with your body, and it must be compulsive. You must be dependent on it, and there will be negative consequences. You do it despite the negative consequences. The risks far outweigh any benefits you can obtain, but you still do it anyway because you're compulsive and you're dependent. So going to the casino or playing cards with your friends once in a while, I guess. Losing money that you can afford to lose, I guess it's not an addiction. But when you lose money you cannot afford to lose, when you go to these events, places by yourself, even though you're not supposed to, everybody who cares about you tells you don't go, so you hide it. You hide the fact that you go. And the same applies to any other kind of process addiction. In fact, one of the homework questions for you is going to be, name a process addiction that's not mentioned in the lecture today. Speaking of nutrition and drugs, what's the most common addiction? Not the most famous, but the most common addiction? It's caffeine. Caffeine is a drug. Yes, caffeine is a drug. All the things we're going to talk about that applies to drugs, to addiction, can be applied to caffeine. Nicotine, might have been your answer if I didn't show you this slide and I just asked what's the most common drug addiction. Some of you may say nicotine, some of you say alcohol, some of you will skip right over it and say something like cocaine or marijuana. No, all of these socially acceptable, available over the counter, although a couple of them you may need ID now to prove you are an adult. But anyway, these are all socially acceptable to use. And in fact, caffeine is not only the most common addiction, it's also the most socially acceptable addiction too. When somebody says, I desperately need my coffee, you give me my coffee or I'm going to rip your head off, and everybody laughs and says, yeah, I know, I've been there, all that stuff. It's like people are encouraged to get a caffeine addiction and are celebrated for having it. But it is a drug. How do drugs work? Neurotransmitters is the chemicals in our body that one part of the body uses to signal other parts of the body. And so making the chemical is one thing, but how do the other parts of the body know to receive the signal? And they have to have receptors. And the best analogy I've ever heard is the lock and key analogy. Imagine these neurotransmitters, these are hormones that as neurotransmitter is a kind of hormone, and these are chemicals that float around the body, mainly through the bloodstream, and they're like keys, just floating around the body. And then once in a while, one of them will bump into a lock, and if it doesn't fit, then it doesn't trigger whatever function the hormone is for. But if it does happen to perfectly fit, then it does trigger. The question then becomes, well, let's take a very well-known drug, cocaine, which is synthesized from the poppy plant. How did that plant know that humans will have a receptor for that isolated chemical one of these days? Because that plant took how many years to evolve? Thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years. How did it know all that time ago, let's make more of ourselves, but let's include a chemical that will be a very popular party drug in a million years from now? Of course it didn't. What happened was that as humans were developing society, well, they learned how to make fire, and they started throwing things on the fire. So they were throwing wood on the fire because that seems to be the best at continuing the fire. They would throw branches on the fire, and they noticed from time to time that some branches have unusual effects on their bodies compared to other branches. And one person would tell the other, hey, let's burn that branch today, I'm feeling a little tired. Or let's burn that branch today, I'm feeling a little sick. Anyway, word of mouth, generation by generation, these stories were passed down: use this branch or don't use that branch. And then finally, when the science of chemistry matured, that some very, very smart people were able to isolate the active ingredient that was making them feel this way. And what happened was, these plants, they don't care about you. They're doing their own thing. They're making their own molecules for their own reasons. It's just that molecule just randomly happens to fit our receptor. So that's how these synthetically created drugs, these exogenous drugs, are able to work in our body. What are the chances of that? What are the chances that a random piece of junk will fit into our lock and open our door? Very, very small, obviously. But how many things have humans been throwing on the fire since the beginning of humankind, since the invention or the discovery of fire? So if you try enough things, enough times, eventually one of those will work. Right. So neurotransmitter is a kind of hormone. One of the most famous neurotransmitters is dopamine, which is a chemical that the brain uses to reinforce behavior. So there's a few feel-good chemicals that you may have heard of. Dopamine is one of them. Serotonin, the happiness hormone neurotransmitter. Oxytocin, the neurotransmitter of love. So so there's dopamine. Okay. Dopamine is something that the brain releases when another part of the brain realizes that whatever you just did was good. How do you define good? Well, the mind works in mysterious ways, but eventually this mind decided that this thing you just did was good. And in order to encourage the person to do it again, they release a little bit of dopamine, which makes the person feel good, and it has other effects that reinforce the behavior. This is one of the known ways that that addiction can spiral out of control. This pleasure circuit. So whether it is a whether it is a substance addiction, or a process addiction, eventually the brain releases a little bit of dopamine every time you use it, and your receptors for dopamine take it, triggers the feelings of satisfaction, achievement, pleasure, and you want to do it again. So that was one kind of hormone in the body. There's hundreds and hundreds of hormones in the body. Here are some of the more famous ones that you may have heard of, but it's beyond the scope of this class to talk about. I did talk about insulin before, 2 weeks ago in the diseases lecture for diabetes, but anyway, we're not going to get into that today. All drugs, let's go back here. All drugs have the following effects. Tolerance is the more you take of a drug for a certain effect, the weaker its effect becomes over time, and so you need a larger and larger dose to have the same effect. What's happening is your body's receptors are getting used to the presence of this drug. So you may have experienced it with things like pain reliever, Tylenol, ibuprofen. Most of us have experienced it with alcohol. When we first started out, it only took a sip of beer. When we were small children, it only took a sip of beer that we stole from our parents' refrigerator to get us feeling queasy. But some of us, now it's going to take like it's going to take the entire bottle before we start feeling a buzz. That's tolerance building up. How tolerance works beyond the scope of this class, but it's fascinating. Well, sneak preview, it's part of something called a feedback loop. Okay, and receptor downregulation, but again, you don't need to know it for this class. Many of these slides I borrowed from my other lectures, and I just left it in there for those who want to know a little bit more. Okay. With continued use of the drug, with continued tolerance, not only the receptors of the body get used to having high levels of this drug in the body, but other parts of the body start getting used to having this drug in the body. And then if the presence of this drug was suddenly taken away, then those chemical reactions are no longer possible, and the organs, the whole body starts to suffer effects of it, and that's withdrawal. Withdrawal is when, after the body is used to the presence of a drug or a process, because process addictions like gambling, shopping, can also suffer withdrawal from the dopamine loss. Anyway, when the addictive substance or process is suddenly stopped, the body is expecting the presence of these drugs, and it's not there. And these side effects start showing up as a result of withdrawal. If the withdrawal symptoms are so bad that the addicted person, feels it themselves, I'm not talking about the people around them notice it. The people around them have been noticing that they've been addicted for a long time. It's just that the addicted person has been in denial, that they think they're fooling everybody, but you're not. When the person who is addicted starts to feel the withdrawal so badly that becomes intolerable, and they feel like they cannot function normally, then in their own definition, not their friend's definition of normal, not their family's definition of normal, but their own perception of normal, and they feel like they need to resume the addictive substance or activity in order to become their regular self. That is dependence. Some of you are now rolling your eyes and saying, okay, boomer, you don't know what real life is like. You don't know me. You don't know what I'm going through. And you're right. I don't know you. I don't know what you're going through. And whatever situation you are in that you have to deal with, then that is your own battle. That is your own list of priorities. But that doesn't change the fact that this is still true. You have some goal in your life. And it takes work. After all, if it was easy, if it was a flat line, or downhill run, then it's not really a goal, right? You would just go and do it. But the fact that you haven't done it yet means it's not easy. It means it does take work, and it does. Most life achievements take steady work over a long time. But a problem is that that goal you're going for is far away, and right now, today, where you are, there are some things you can do instead that feel better. A step down instead of a step up. There's advertisements trying to attract you, tempt you into taking the step down. Take the easy route. Give them money, and they will make your life easier, at least for the short term. And it's really hard to resist these temptations. And part of your mind is thinking, it's okay. I can, instead of taking one step up now, I can go one step down and then take two steps up later, until one day it's too late. You've fallen off the deep end, and now there's no way to come back. I hope none of you are this far down, but in order to not get yourself into this situation, you want to take the right step more times than you take the wrong step. Okay, Peter Pan, that's some nice words, but have you ever lived it? I lost 40 pounds in 5 years, so I've lived this. Maybe I haven't been through the terrors, traumas that you have been through, but in my own small way, I've lived this too. I was down here, and I had to do a lot of backtracking in order to get about here. Okay, so a common fallacy, misunderstanding that people who are addicted, and including the addiction of procrastination. Procrastination is an addiction too. It's a process addiction. And so now let me add that to the list of no-goes. Where is it? Procrastination. Sex and porn. Okay, the sex and porn, two separate things. All right. Procrastination is a process addiction too. You're cramming the night before an exam, and it's from reasons that are completely under your control. It's not some kind of external stressor, life problem. It's like self-induced. And so it's a night before the exam, and you're stressing, you're terrified you're going to fail out of class or out of your life goal of achieving a degree. And so you tell yourself, I swear by God, I will never procrastinate again. The fallacy is that you are promising yourself or somebody that you will be perfect tomorrow, and that is just impossible. You try to be perfect tomorrow, you will fail. Instead, the path out of addiction is one small step at a time. In fact, you should leave room in your schedule for mistakes, delays, and stumbles. So it's okay if you're here and then you drop down to here. It's okay, because after all, you accidentally took a step down. You can always take two steps up later. So it's okay. In fact, failure, as far as this course is concerned, failure is not only an option, it actually sometimes is a quite useful strategy. For example, in my own weight loss journey, I've literally intentionally scheduled in cheat days focused around the holidays, friends, special occasions. I show up, they got a birthday cake, and they offer me a cake. I don't be the jerk. I don't say, sorry, I'm on a diet. I don't say, ew, carbohydrates. No, I eat the cake. and then I exercise and diet a little harder the following week. So I schedule in cheat days, and during holiday season, it's holiday season now. I'm going to expect Christmas songs to start playing on the stores any day now. The holiday seasons, yeah, it's hard to stick to your diet. You go to one event, another event. The advertising is getting really fierce. The temptations are there. So just accept it that this is going to be the holidays, especially Christmas time, is cheat week. But then every time you have a victory, no matter how small, reward yourself. Self-discipline, conquering addiction, self-discipline, self-discipline, gaining more control over procrastination. Self-discipline is a muscle. You don't go to the gym and try to lift 500 pounds on your first day. No, you put on 10 pounds and try that. And then the next day you're going to be sore. But as long as you didn't obviously break something, you try again. And then a week later, if you feel up to it, you can go up to 20 pounds. And then think that one of these days, you're going to make it all the way up to 100 pounds. Maybe next year, maybe 2 years. 100 pounds in 2 years, that sounds about okay. That's been my plan at the gym. Get the gain slowly. Dig yourself out of that addiction slowly. The biopsychosocial model of addiction is that it's not just the biology. You're addicted to crack cocaine, you're addicted to fentanyl, you're addicted to gambling, you're addicted to the internet. It's not just the biology at work here. There's the psychology, and there's also the sociology. I can only mention it, but this is really fascinating. One of the problems with the war on drugs is that it only addresses the biology of it, and very minimally addresses the psychology and social, like that famous line, "Just say no," or "drugs are bad." The war on drugs failed because their attempts to address the psycho and the social, especially the social model, is failing. It seems like whenever they, as in like the authority figures, the man, whenever they release a new advertising campaign trying to make people stop trying illegal drugs, it just falls flat on young people's minds. It's not getting through. It's not reaching through. So what happens? The parental figures are telling them drugs are bad, but young people who are naturally rebellious, that is the lifespan. Next week we're going to talk about lifespan. This is the phase in life where I believe it's been an evolutionary advantage for young people to ignore their parents, ignore other people of their parents' age, and just do whatever they think they want. So they are especially vulnerable to people who want to tempt them into risky behavior. So they go off and try drugs anyway. Dependence and codependence. These two terms are used interchangeably. And then enablers and codependence. These two terms are used interchangeably to the point where it almost sounds like they mean the same thing. No, they don't mean the same thing. This is a subtle difference. Codependent is a kind of enabler. Codependent is when the enabler is locked into an unhealthy relationship with the addicted person for whatever their reason, financial reason, emotional reason, whatever the reason, the person who is enabling is trapped in this relationship with the addicted person to the point where they feel like they have no choice but to support the addiction. Okay, process addiction. So addictive behaviors. So add this to the list of addictions that you are not allowed to mention in the homework assignment when I ask what other process addictions can you think of. Don't throw up your hands and say, I give up, I don't know. It's out there. Just keep on searching, and eventually you'll run into it. This one question I will allow you to ask your friends and family. Can you think of an addictive behavior, a process addiction that is not gambling, shopping, sex or porn, internet, technology, work, exercise? Then think of something else. Work addiction. Is it possible to be addicted to your work, like your job? Oh yes, yes. Many of us find it hard to imagine how that is possible, but there are some people types, personality types, and there are some work types that suck people in and completely consume their lives. Oh wait, let me go backwards. I need to say something. Maybe it goes all the way back to the... Well, all right. When we're talking about addiction, I'm not, in this class, when I say addiction, I'm not talking about you like something, so you do it too much. But you have a healthy awareness of how much is way too much and you stop. Okay, that's not addiction. Many of us say we're addicted to ice cream, but after one serving, some of us maybe 2 servings, we stop. And then if somebody asks, would you like another one? And many of us say, no thanks, I've had enough. I thought you're addicted to ice cream. Oh, I am, but the calories, I don't want to ruin my appetite for dinner or whatever. So that's not an addiction, okay, in this course. An addiction in this class is a disorder. It's a mental health disorder. What is a disorder? A disorder is a state where the negative consequences of that thing that is a disorder is preventing the person from achieving, for fulfilling their responsibilities. What responsibilities? Responsibilities to themselves, responsibilities to others, whether it's friends or family, responsibilities to their grades, responsibilities to their work. They are not fulfilling their responsibilities. People are depending on them, their coworkers, their children, their parents. People are depending on them to hold up their half of the relationship, and they're not doing it because of the disorder. So the disorder can be medical, the disorder can be psychological, like addiction, and that's what addiction means. So let's go back to this. If you try to say, oh, I'm addicted to the internet, that's fine. I'm addicted to this computer game, that's nice. But if you play for 4 hours, that's kind of bad, because think of all the things you were supposed to do that day, but you didn't. But if you are able to still fulfill all your responsibilities and still find time to play a computer game for 4 hours, that's not an addiction. But when you are not able to fulfill your responsibilities to others, to yourself, grades, paying the bills, basic hygiene, seriously, gamers, please take a bath. And everybody, please brush your teeth. I'm getting tired of smelling bad breath, like really bad breath. Please brush your teeth. So failing in your responsibility to yourself to maintain basic health hygiene, then there's some kind of addiction going on. So if the failure to fulfill your own responsibilities are caused by too much work, too much exercise, yes, that is a very real thing. Why is that red? Did I spell that right? Nurturance. Oh, check your sources. Check your sources. Oxford Language Dictionary. Okay, Oxford is a very, back in the days of books, back in the days when we used to use paper, Oxford Dictionary and Merriam-Webster were highly respected, trusted sources of spelling references. Okay, so I did spell it right. I guess it's just the online dictionary here that this editor is using didn't recognize it. Anyway, exercise. When some people can go to the gym way too much. Some people can work on their body to the point where they are failing in their relationships to themselves and to others. They are failing in their responsibilities to themselves and to others. And of course, it's possible to have multiple addictions. So, still, you're not convinced. What does this have to do with nutrition? Okay. Well, on the face of it, especially that gym exercise addiction, and the flip side, which is obsession over obesity to the point where the person is literally starving themselves. These are all kinds of dysmorphias. A dysmorphia, bad, this is bad. Morph is shape. I'd be careful. Morph is shape. Morphe is sleep. Like Morpheus from the movie Matrix. There's a guy whose name is inspired by the dreams. Morphium is a drug that makes people sleep. Anyway, morphia is shape, dysmorphia is bad shape. So people think that their body is out of shape or ugly, even though everybody else can see that they're not weak, they're not fat. So, but in their mind, they see an ugly person, even though everybody will agree they are beautiful. And so that's dysmorphia. It's a broken mind. It's not really a broken body, but the broken mind causes them to break their body, either too much exercise or too much dieting. So things like anorexia, bulimia is also a dysmorphia. Anyway, a woman who exercises too much, like way too much, can experience the female athlete triad, which is amenorrhea, menstrual dysfunction, low energy, and decreased bone density. But I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail next week. Next week with life stages. Well, I will mention this again next week with life stages. Okay. So bulimia is it's a disorder, it's an obsession, it's a compulsion, so it's also an addiction. But addiction is a mental health disorder. This entire lecture is about mental health, is an extension of the mental health disorder. So bulimia is a mental health disorder where the obsession with being skinny is occasionally overwhelmed by their compulsion to eat. So when their willpower fails, they are overwhelmed with feelings of self-loathing, disgust. They feel, and so they react to it by emptying out the food they just ate, which means either sending it out one way or sending it out the other way. There's also vigorous or excessive exercise too. Vomiting once in a while, like once in a long while, is okay because it's a wound. The stomach acid causes a wound in the inside of your mouth, throat, and esophagus, the food tube, and then your body repairs itself after wounds. But if it's repeated wounding, then your body doesn't get a chance to. And bulimia, chronic bulimia, results in destruction of mouth, throat, teeth, gums, and esophagus. Excessive vomiting loses too much acid. Your body has to make more, and so the electrolytes around the body is diluted, and that creates organ damage all over the body too. Laxatives also results in diarrhea, and then the body loses too many electrolytes the other way. Anorexia is the overwhelming willpower causes the person to just stop eating. Just stop eating. They are literally starving themselves to death without sufficient nutrients, without a balanced diet. Failures, organs start shutting down all over the body. Those were all mental health disorders. Yes, the people suffering from these conditions, they can have their symptoms addressed in the emergency room, but as soon as they are discharged from the hospital, they'll go right back into their behavior, because that does not solve the root cause, which is the mental health disorder. So the root cause solution, the long-term solution to these disorders, is a consult with a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist. What's the difference? Psychiatrist. Psychiatry is a medical doctor. A psychologist is trained outside of medical school. So originally the oversimplified definition was a psychiatrist are dealing with disorders of the mind from the medical point of view, and they can write prescriptions for drugs, and a psychologist is for general public mental state, and they used to not write prescription for drugs. I think there's been a lot of overlap ever since. I am neither, and I am not an expert in mental health, so I'm not familiar with what the current state of the definitions are. But if you talk to either one, something tells me that they will recommend the following: mindful eating. So before you get into that kind of a situation, before your mind completely breaks and you need expert consult, avoid getting into that situation in the first place. Practice mindful eating, which is when you feel a craving, when you feel a need to eat something or not eat something, ask yourself why. Are you truly hungry? What if you feel a craving for something even though you ate a good lunch only an hour ago? Then, which is what I do when I feel myself craving something, especially if I walk by the vending machine and I feel a craving to buy one of those, and my body is trying to tell me, well, actually my mind is trying to tell me, you're hungry, you're hungry, you're hungry. I've been training myself to ask why. I can't possibly be hungry. I just had a very nice meal, well calculated. I know what I'm doing. I teach this stuff, for crying out loud. I know I ate a good meal. How can I possibly be hungry? It must be something else. It must be something else. What are my triggers for snacking? What are my triggers for snacking, for eating outside of my diet plan? Could be social. It could be simple as I'm walking by the vending machine and that's my trigger. It could be that I have a 30-minute break or a 15-minute break. Back in many years ago, every time I had a short break, I bought a snack or I ate something. So I got into the habit of, if break, then snack. and I've been working very hard to try to break that trigger, to disconnect that trigger from the snacking and do something else. So what do I do now? Well, I browse the internet. I chew chewing gum, something instead of snacking. Okay. I mentioned this a couple of lectures ago. What about those diet drugs? And if I lost that much weight, 40 pounds in 5 years, I must be cheating, right? I must be using these drugs. No, I can't afford it. I can't afford it. My doctor that long ago suggested one of these things because it was just hitting the news, but insurance would not cover it. And the more I learned about it, the more I'm glad I didn't go this route, because this is a pill. This is a magic pill. But what it does what it does not do is teach self-discipline. Those weight loss drugs, since the person magically, synthetically, artificially don't feel hungry, don't feel craving, then they don't practice self-discipline. And self-discipline, like going to the gym, is not something you learn overnight. It's something you build 5 pounds at a time over years. You cannot learn self-discipline overnight. So somebody who loses weight the natural way, the normal way, has been not only been shedding the pounds, but they've also been growing in self-discipline. Maybe not all of their life, but at least when it comes to food, they have been practicing self-discipline. People who lose weight on these weight loss drugs, first of all, they lose it very quickly. And there's this old phrase, easy come, easy go, or this time, easy go, easy come back, once they get off the drugs. And the reason why is if they ever get off the drugs, then that feeling of craving food comes back, and they never learned to fight it. Their minds never learned how to fight that craving. So they give in, just like they used to, and then the weight comes back. So these are still early in these drug categories. Long-term side effects are not known because they haven't been around long enough to do actual research on them. So far, the some side effects have been found, but serious side effects are so far very rare. But again, it's too soon to tell definitively. So how do these weight loss drugs actually work? It's drug, right? We're talking about addiction. We're talking about drugs. Well, I'm not a biochemical expert, but from what I've been reading, the gist seems to be that it interferes with, oops, wrong slide. Oh yeah, here. The gist seems to be, the mechanism of action seems to be that it suppresses human cravings. And it's a pathway, it's a neuro pathway that is not exclusively about food. So some people have been wondering if it suppresses cravings about one thing, could it suppress cravings about another thing? Could it be used for treatment on other kinds of addiction? And some researchers are saying, yeah, let's give it a try. Let's go look into it. And they are. So I think it was a couple of months ago that one of the first research reports came out where they used these drugs on an actual drug addiction. It's promising, but it's too soon to be definitive, just like this drug. It's too soon to be definitive, but it's promising. and if one research report starts leaking out, it means other researchers are in the process of doing their own work on different drugs, other kinds of addiction. So this is a very interesting space. I'm going to keep my eye out for future publications on this kind of thing. Anyway, another reason why these drugs are in the news is that they seem to make birth control pills fail. So if you are taking birth control pills, careful. Be careful of it. Talk to your doctor. You don't want to have any pleasant surprises when you're on birth control pills and these drugs at the same time. Okay. Everything is still so new that there's not enough sample size to be definitive. There hasn't been enough research to be definitive. These are all so far anecdotal, which means it's only been seen in a few cases, not enough to be definitive. I've been talking a lot about weight loss, and in my research on dieting and weight loss, I run into this phrase a lot, fat phobia, where people who encourage others to lose weight or to not be obese have been called fat phobic. The idea is this body positive movement where no matter what state your body is in, you should be positive about it. So anybody who tells somebody who is obese to be not obese, then they must be fat phobic. I have two answers for that. I'm worried about obesity is a problem with heart and arteries, and heart disease is the number one killer of Americans every year. If somebody is hitting their head with a hammer and they like it and they do it every day, I'm going to tell them to stop. If they say don't be cephalotraumaphobic, I'm going to say I'm worried about your health. Hitting your head with a hammer is not recommended. Please stop. The other thing is I've never been about how people look on the outside. So people with a disease are still beautiful, but they still have a disease. Worrying about people's health is not only going to improve their quantity of life. Encouraging people to take better care of themselves is not only about their quantity of life, but the health quality of the years they are alive. Public health officials use many metrics in order to be able to be most efficient with their limited resources, and one of them is YDL, years living with a disability. So a behavior that results in heart disease not only shortens life, but the last few years of their life will be living with a disability. So efforts are made and should be made and should continue to be made to encourage people to work, to exercise more, eat better, and therefore protect their heart and their arteries. Okay. I only touched on this very briefly last time, and just like where is it? So I posted remember this lecture? that you were supposed to have watched for the first midterm exam, and you should also review for the second midterm exam, and then you should also review for the final exam, because questions from this lecture will be on all exams. So I just want to remind you that for most of us, we could lose a little weight, we could be a little stronger, we could improve our endurance, etc. For some of us, we are obese or morbidly obese, and if we don't do something about it, we are increasing our risk for heart disease and and arterial disease. But of course, there's always some part of the population, you may be out there listening to my voice, who are underweight. So what if you are underweight? Then what should you do? Because all of this, everything I've been talking about has been for people who are moderately overweight or more. So of course you want to work your way towards the normal, and I'm using air quotes here, normal defined by your doctor, ranges. But that really is the answer. Talk to your doctor. What can you do? If you want to gain weight just because you want to look better, that's not what I'm about. I'm not about how you look on the outside. I'm about taking care of your heart and arteries. So if you want to gain weight, I strongly recommend you gain weight with exercise. What happens is, remember, protein is, muscles are more dense than fat. Here, let me do that. Let me add that. Muscles are more dense than fat. So you will gain weight, but that's going to be good weight. It's going to be muscular weight. You won't gain weight from fat. And that means then that your shape will improve. Well, I should be careful with the word improve. You will, if you're worried about how you look, then you will look better when you gain more muscle than you do fat. If you are trying to gain weight, lucky you are allowed to eat more carbs than somebody trying to lose weight. And carbs are so easy to find, they're cheap, they taste great. But if you are, again, if you're worried about how you look and you want to get that shredded look, the phrase is, abs are made in the kitchen. Everybody has abs. Everybody. If you can sit up straight, if you can maintain an upright posture, you have abs. When people say they want abs, what they're saying is they want their abdominal muscles to be more visible. What's not making it visible? It's the layer of fat in front. So if you want to have abs, then the real way to show abs to your friends and family, well, your romantic interests, is to reduce the layer of fat in front, which is manage your carbohydrates. Okay. Processed sugar is bad for everybody. Instead, try to get your sugar intake from natural whole foods. Yeah, and I don't mean fruits that are given to you in plastic packages. I mean whole fruits that you buy at the produce aisle in the supermarket. This next section, I'm not going to spend that much time on. I'm sure the information is readily available. Some of you know more about this than I do, and the actual symptoms, treatments, and cautions and warnings are readily available on the internet. But some things that are not always emphasized when you are researching on your own is something like drug-drug interaction. Depending on your age, depending on your medical situation, you may be prescribed more than one drug. You may be prescribed many drugs. Every time you taking more than one drug, And I don't just mean more than one prescription, I mean taking more than one drug. Remember, caffeine is a drug, nicotine is a drug, alcohol is a drug. Anything you buy at the natural health food store, your local corner health food store, anything you buy in a bottle is a drug. Things you take at parties is a drug. All of this, when you stop at the drug store and you buy something in a bottle with that's pill or liquid form, it's probably a drug. And of course, if you use any other kind of, you put anything else in your body, it's a drug. So the number of drugs should count all of those. And for each 2 drugs, there is a drug-drug interaction. If you want to know specific, you can always Google it. I mean, sure, let me do that just for an example. Let's go here. Pick a drug, any drug. Pick a drug, any drug. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you. Here, let's try nicotine, and caffeine interaction. Just do that and see what comes up. As I always tell you every time, always double check your sources. .com, .gov, National Institutes of Health, good one. So here is caffeine and nicotine interaction. Let's see, .com, .org, University of Florida, coffee and cigarettes. So you see, as an example, I won't spend your time. You can do that for yourself. Okay, so any 2 drugs, you can get a drug. Well, what about, and so between 2 drugs, there's 1 drug-drug interaction. What about 3 drugs? There's 3. Because if you take out like the green one and their arrows, then you got 1, 2. If you take out the green one and their arrows, you've got 1, 2, 3 interactions for 3 drugs. What about 4 drugs? There are 6 arrows here. Yeah, 6 arrows here. What's going on? Between 2 drugs, there's 1. Between 3 drugs, there's 3. Between 4 drugs, there's 6. It goes 1, 3, 6. Even though the number of drugs went from 2 to 3 to 4. The number of interactions is increasing faster than the number of drugs. What that means is if you have 5 drugs, 6 drugs, 10 drugs, and that's, remember, it's not just just the prescription drugs, but it's any drug, including caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol. If you add them all up, the interactions start to go crazy. In fact, beyond 5 drugs, it's beyond even the human mind's ability to keep track of the whole thing. So the more drugs you take, the more drug-drug interactions there are, and the more chances that there is some unintended side effect. What kinds of side effects? What are these drug-drug interactions? So here's a list of them, and these are beyond the level of this class in nutrition. But if you're taking any kind of drug, then if your doctor prescribed any kind of drug for you, they will also ask what else are you taking, and in order to make sure no mistakes are made, you need to mention everything. They will of course ask, do you smoke? How much alcohol do you drink? And if you have like a cardiac condition, then they will ask how much coffee you drink or caffeine you drink, because caffeine really pushes the heart. But anyway, you really need to mention all of this so that the doctor can take it into account when they try to predict what this new prescription might do to you and any concerns. Sometimes when you take a drug, you have side effects that are intolerable. Intolerable, fancy word for the risks outweigh the benefits. So, allergic reaction is the most common side effect of any drug, but it's also impossible to predict because allergic reaction is unique to the individual's immune system. It's just that no matter what drug that's out there, somebody's allergic to it. We just no way of knowing who it is. Another kind of intolerance is the drug interacts with something else that causes an intolerable reaction, and that is predictable. And so a classic medical school example is the disulfiram reaction. Somebody who takes disulfiram, which is an antibiotic, and then they take alcohol later, cause severe vomiting, severe nausea and vomiting. And in fact, some programs like alcohol addiction intervention programs, sometimes they will recommend the participant take disulfiram, and the idea is that the next time they cheat and sneak a little alcohol later, they will be so unbearably nauseous that it'll train their mind to never want alcohol again. But that was the old days. I'm not sure if they still use disulfiram these days for that. Okay. Cross tolerance is these drugs are organized by category of their mechanism of action, how they actually do what they do. And sometimes if a person has an intolerance to one drug, they often have a similar intolerance to other drugs in that category. Let's see. For example, antihistamines. So antihistamine, you take for pollen season, is a very, very large category in which there are subcategories. And if somebody has found that they are allergic or has any other kind of intolerance to one specific antihistamine that they tried when they bought it in the drugstore, and they tell their doctor about it, and then they can ask, doc, what should I do? And the doctor will say, you should not take any more antihistamines in this subcategory. And then they'll list like other drug names that are in the similar mechanism of action category. Okay. Misuse is when you use a drug for something other than intended. Like if there was this thing many years ago of a popular cold medicine was found to have certain narcotic effects, and so people were buying the cold medication in order to cook a narcotic out of it and then sell it on the street. That's drug misuse. When you share prescription medications with friends and family, you are not only practicing drug misuse, you're literally practicing medicine without a license, because you haven't done the appropriate assessment of the person to assess for potential side effects, for contraindications. A contraindication is when there's a reason not to take the drug. Like your doctor, when they prescribed you the drug, did all of that. They knew exactly why you needed the drug, why this drug works on you, and you didn't have any of the contraindications or reason not to give you the drug, so that's why they wrote you the prescription. But you didn't do that for your friend or family because you're not a doctor. You don't know what kinds of questions to ask, how to properly assess, how to do a drug test, how to do a blood test. Instead, you just say, oh, you have these complaints. Hey, I had these complaints. This is why I take this drug. You should take it too. Drug misuse. Drug abuse is taking too much. The most well known is alcohol abuse. So you take way more alcohol than you're supposed to take. How much is too much? That's in the next chapter, next section. Okay. So over-the-counter drugs are often misused, and the problem again is that it can cause overdose. So how do you avoid overdoses? Read the directions in the back. Follow the directions. Especially with Tylenol, ibuprofen, aspirin, because those are some of the most commonly taken drugs in the drugstore, and people who take them for pain sometimes take too much. If you read the labels in the back, they usually say do not take for more than 7 days, or do not take more than this many tablets or caplets per day, and do not take more than this many days. If you still feel pain, then consult a doctor. What they're saying, two things. First of all, if you still have pain after that many days, okay, something's clearly wrong with you. You really need to get to the bottom of this. Don't just address the pain, find out what's causing it. So maybe it's something that's getting slowly worse and worse and worse, and all you're doing is turning off the pain signal, but not addressing the disease that's causing the pain. The other thing is you can build tolerance to that pain reliever. And finally, you can take this in such toxic levels, overdose, that it causes damage to your body. The most common toxic damage that Tylenol, ibuprofen, aspirin does is it wears down the liver. It's toxic to the liver. It can cause liver failure if you take way too much. So prescription drugs, Americans make the most expensive urine of the world, because Americans take the most prescription drugs of anybody else in the world. Illicit drugs, and this is the age-old story in the big city or small towns of people who are taking drugs to change the way they feel. But now, why are they taking these drugs? What's causing this demand for illegal drugs? It's not just the pursuit of whatever the drugs are causing, the feelings that those drugs are causing. That's the biology, but there's the psychology and there's the sociology. So the biopsychosocial model of addiction, something about their minds and something about their society they're living in is inducing them or encouraging them to try these drugs, because something is happening at home, something is happening in their town that is causing them to seek escape, seek relief, look for resolution of the stressors from their mind and from where they live, from the life they are living. Until those are addressed, then this person can go to detox, have that drug flushed out of their body, but then as soon as they're discharged from the hospital, they'll go back to doing those drugs again, because the root cause is still the same. Stimulants are uppers, depressants are downers. Pro tip: in healthcare, in the general public and criminal justice system, these drugs are included in the term narcotic, but in healthcare they are not. In healthcare, a narcotic is a thing that puts you asleep. A narcotic is a downer. So these drugs are stimulants, uppers, are not a narcotic because they don't cause you to sleep. Just a terminology specific. Okay. So nutrition and drugs. Some people turn to stimulants to help them lose weight. And so their thinking is, I really should put this in quotes, more energy out, equals more weight lost, and that is their thinking, which may or may not be true, but that's only looking at one tiny part of the drug. The other part, the problem with a stimulant, is that it accelerates the heartbeat, overclocks the heart, spikes blood pressure, which results in heart disease. And if the person takes too much of the drug, after all, they're taking it illegally, so they're not taking it under doctor's supervision. And what's exactly in that pill anyway? It's not like it was made. You can't assume it was made properly. You have no idea what other ingredients are. You don't even know if it's the real thing. After all, what if you did get something? What if somebody gave you something and told you they are amphetamines, but what they really did was mix half of it with rat poison? What are you going to do if you find out? Complain to the Better Business Bureau? What are you going to do? Call the police and say you've been robbed, or somebody sold you something that was not true? So those dealers got their money. They think they expected you to die, so they don't care. They know you're ruining your lives anyway, so they don't care. They're going to skip town, and you're stuck with a drug that's causing problems. Many people who overdose on stimulants end up having heart attacks. Okay. There is this assumption in general society that smoking helps lose weight. Now, biochemically, there may be something to it, but the damage one does to the body far outweighs any benefit from that weight loss, and that only applies to people who are overweight in the first place, right? People who are over here, people who are like in this half of the curve, they don't need to lose any more weight, so they don't need this effect on the nicotine, even if it's true. But meanwhile, the people who smoke are exposing themselves to cardiovascular disease, and not just lung cancer, but many other cancers, as this nicotine and all the other chemicals that the cigarette companies put into those cigs, are coursing around their body, doing all kinds of damage. Meanwhile, those who smoke because it looks cool, it's becoming less and less cool every generation. The trend is down. The trend is going down. Benefits immediately after quitting smoking. There's this infographic, and it's like after a few hours, these are the benefits. After a couple days, these are the benefits. After a couple weeks, these are the benefits. And then after about a year of quitting smoking, your lungs at least will have recovered much of the damage that you had done to it. So there is still hope. Smokefree.gov is a website from the US government trying to encourage people to stop smoking. And they addressed one thing, that some people have noticed among those who quit smoking that they did gain a little bit of weight. It could be not just the biochemistry going on, but that these ex-smokers who are so used to using every break time as a trigger to go have a cigarette, the next break time, they don't know what to do. The next break time, they're so used to having something in their hands and their mouth that they don't know what to do. And so they reach for a candy bar, they reach for a bag of chips, they reach for a junk food snack. And that causes the weight gain. So if you are quitting smoking, good for you. I mean, good for you. You're taking your life back into your hands. So I wish you all success. So, but one of the battles that you will have to fight, as well as your craving, is to not transfer that craving to junk food. If you must have something in your mouth, then try to have something healthy in your mouth. How about chewing gum? Okay. Depressants, these are the narcotics, both in general language, both in the criminal justice system and also in healthcare. Depressants are the narcotics. Brings people down. People say it helps them relax. People say it helps them party, whatever. Anyway, alcohol is one of the depressants. And if you say, how is that possible? I know this guy, every time he gets drunk, he starts doing stupid stuff. And the answer is it depresses inhibition. So things that they would not have done sober, they are now feel free to do. Their body is actually depressed, but the area of the brain that inhibits unwise decisions is now depressed even more, and they go ahead and do it. In this and other ways, alcohol causes the mind to make some really unwise decisions. This is why you shouldn't make any important life decisions while you're drunk. Yes, I know marijuana is legal in New York, but would you want your surgeon to be drunk while they operate on you? Alcohol is legal in New York, but you wouldn't want, but alcohol is prohibited in the workplace, especially when operating heavy machinery, and so you should also not be high while performing risky, delicate procedures. Effects of, so now for now on, for the rest of this slide, actually no, I need to talk about this. So the real narcotic in a depressant is the opioids. These are the original narcotics. What's going on with opioids? Okay, so where did opioids come from? Well, the opium is the granddaddy of them all, from the poppy plant. And then during World War II, they had morphine from morphia, which is sleep. But then the descendants of morphine are these things, and the street drug, the famous street drug is heroin. But there are prescription opiates, and these are all prescribed as, not heroin is not prescribed, but these are all prescribed as pain relievers. The problem, and they work great. They are very good, powerful pain relievers. The problem is that if the person overdoses, it could cause them to stop breathing. So the next time you are at a party and you find your friend laying down, check if they're breathing. If they're not breathing, consider squirting Narcan up the nose. Our Narcan is an antagonist, is an opioid receptor antagonist. What's an antagonist? Let's go back to slide. Where did I put it? It can't be down here. Oh, I guess it is. An antagonist is something that reduces the effect of the other drug. So when you give Narcan, it reduces the effect of the opioid, hopefully enough to make them start breathing again. What if you have trouble telling? What if you don't know how to tell if somebody is breathing? Take a CPR class, because maybe your friend needs CPR too. But in the CPR class, you learn how to assess a person for breathing. This lecture is made possible by our sponsor, Queensborough Community College, which provides CPR classes several times a semester. I know all of the people who teach those CPR classes. They're all very good. They all have more experience than me in teaching CPR. You can't go wrong with taking a CPR class here in Queensborough. But if you decide that, and it's 1 credit hour, But if you decide that you don't need the credit hour, or the Queensboro credit hour is a little too expensive for you, all you need to do is Google for CPR class and then your zip code. Queensboro zip code is 11366. And then look at that. You get lots of CPR classes available in the local area, and they typically cost around $100 and last a day. The Queensboro CPR class is 2 days, but anyway, go learn how to do CPR. You never know, you may be able to save a life. It could be the life of somebody very important to you. All right, from now on, these slides are a little more, are just some very brief comments about other known drug categories, but I'm not going to go into that. These are slides from another lecture, but feel free to review these, and then do your own research for more information. Speaking of nutrition, therefore, speaking of improving your overall health, which means going to the gym, and some people have an exercise process addiction where they are so obsessed and compulsive about going to the gym that they are harming the other aspects of their life. Some will go the next step and take anabolic steroids. Those things that some muscle builders, bodybuilders, and professional athletes are accused of taking. And yes, they increase muscle mass because the anabolic steroid is a synthetic external form of testosterone, the male sex hormone, which increases muscle growth and strength. This is not the same as a catabolic steroid. So if you are in the doctor's clinic and the doctor wants to prescribe you a steroid, they will never prescribe you an anabolic steroid. The purpose of catabolic steroids is to suppress the immune system. What? Wait, don't you need that? Don't you need the immune system to protect you from infection? Yes, you do. But some diseases and some physical complaints are caused by an excessive reaction of your immune system. So especially when there's no actual infection. It's all been a horrible misunderstanding. Your immune system is overreacting to a potential invader that's not there. So what happens is the doctor prescribes a catabolic steroid such as hydrocortisone, prednisone, dexamethasone. So what happens is they go throughout your body or to the specific area. Like I use hydrocortisone for mosquito bites for myself because they become horribly, horribly itchy, and they're so distracting. I can't think of anything else until I put the cortisone on. So these steroids, these catabolic steroids go through your body, tell your immune system, tell your troops, they tell your soldiers, everybody stand down. There's no invader. Calm down, chill, go back to base, put your guns away. There's no invader, and the immune system settles down. So mosquito bites, at least for me, when I get a mosquito bite, my immune system detects the mosquito saliva in my blood and thinks that's an invader. They think it's a virus or a bacteria, and they sound the alarm, and that area where the bite was swells and becomes horribly itchy. So I put the cortisone on, saying it's just mosquito saliva. Yeah, it's gross, but it's not a threat. Just settle down, and then my swelling goes down and the itchiness goes away. There's a class of diseases called autoimmune disease that takes it to the next level, where there is no invasion. Maybe it was sparked by the threat of an invasion long ago, but that invader is long gone. What happened though is that the panic and the red alarm it started is hanging around, and for some unfortunate tragic reason, your immune system decides that one of the molecules that is natural in your body is a sign of the invader, and they start attacking it. And your organ that has that molecule is saying, like, wait, I need that. I'm one of you guys. I'm a citizen here. See, here's my ID. But here's my passport. See, I'm one of you. But the immune system has gone crazy and is attacking your own organs. That is an autoimmune disease. Auto means self. For them, they absolutely get catabolic steroids, among other things, to try to suppress the immune system. So, before I leave this slide, there's one question then. If you do have some kind of rash on your body, should you use an antibiotic or should you use hydrocortisone before you try going to the doctor? Because if it's a real infection, then maybe you do need an antibiotic. But if it's not an infection and it's just an autoimmune reaction or an allergic reaction, then and you put an antibiotic on, it's not going to do anything. But if you use like topical hydrocortisone, then it'll take the rash down. But if you put hydrocortisone and it turned out it was an infection or fungal infection, fungus love cortisone. Giving fungus cortisone is like giving a 10-year-old kid sugar cereal. You give hydrocortisone to an actual ongoing active infection, it's going to cause a bloom. You're going to make it makes everything really much, much worse. So how do you know which is which? Ask your doctor. Back to the anabolic steroids that some people use to increase muscle mass and strength. It creates some positive effects. Of course, it increases muscle mass and strength. For some, they get addicted to the process of exercise, which means they get addicted to looking like that. But the problem with the two well-known, you don't even have to be a healthcare provider to know this, the two known downsides on top of all the others is increasing emotional instability and smaller testicles. How is this possible? To oversimplify it, those who take anabolic steroids, they are injecting external synthetic testosterone into their body. Instead of having normal amounts of testosterone that the male produces, they have 10 times, 100 times, 100, 1,000, no, I mean 100%, 1,000%, 10,000% testosterone in their body. Whose job is it to make testosterone? The testicles. The testicles make testosterone on a feedback loop to make sure that there's never too much in the body. So when they see the levels of testosterone spike crazy to crazy levels, they look around and go, well, my job here is done. I guess I'll shut down. That's called atrophy. It's called shrinking from disuse. What else are testicles needed for? They make other hormones, and some of them are very important in the emotional regulation. So that's why people who are taking too many anabolic steroids are famous for having emotional instability. Treatment for all addiction, no matter whether it's a substance addiction or a process addiction, will involve an intervention. Intervention means stop whatever is happening from happening, break the cycle, break the chain, and the first step will be to break down denial. The person who is addicted is in denial. They think, yeah, I've heard, I've done the research, I know what you're talking about, but it's not me. or I'm not addicted, I can always get out of it, I can always stop anytime they are in denial. And then once the person breaks out of that denial, sometimes tragically they won't finally get out of the denial until their life is a shattered mess. But until once they finally get out of that denial, then they are ready. They are ready for the other steps. Other steps like cognitive behavior therapy. Of course, they need the detox. Detox is just to save them from immediate life threats. It washes the toxins out of their body, literally, but it does nothing for the psycho and the social root causes of addiction. And so, the psychological mental health, so break out of the denial and then get into therapy in a treatment program. And meanwhile, something else has to be done about the social, the situation of their life that they are in that drove them to trying the drug in the first place. That is very, very complicated, easier said than done. In fact, many times, and most of the times, most of the places, they have not solved it. But that's the state of addiction recovery today. It takes a village. So the social of the biopsychosocial model, the social literally means it takes a village. It took a village to drive this person into addiction. It's going to take a village, friends, family, extended family, the community resources to save this person and get him out of addiction. Last stretch, final stretch of this lecture, to borrow a gambling term. The final stretch, or the last stretch, is a term for horse racing. Anyway, alcohol and tobacco. Fortunately, I think everybody has already heard these things, right? Your parents, your teachers, health promotion advertising campaigns have been telling people to not drink so much, to stop smoking. How well does it work? Well, it's up to your matter of opinion. But anyway, somebody was asking how much is too much alcohol. So here it is. Who is the NIAH? I forgot. Let's go look him up. National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. Okay, they sound like they know what they're talking about, and it is their umbrella organization is the National Institutes of Health .government. So, okay, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt that they know what they're talking about. This is how much is too much. Binge drinking is just too much. They in one session they drink way too much until they become blackout drunk, until they throw up. Everybody laughs, everybody thinks it's funny, they think you're cool, or they say you're cool, but they're really laughing behind your back. But then sometime later, when you failed out of school, everybody says, "Oh, too bad. I like the guy. He was fun at parties." The positive comments from your peers are encouraging you to continue in this behavior, but they don't care if you pass or fail. They don't care if you stay in school and achieve your dreams, or you took all that money and wasted it for nothing. Anyway, how much alcohol is in a drink? And I think you've heard this. I mean, this is well known. Let me just clean that up. This is a well-known infographic here. Okay, one serving, basically. Okay, if you're pregnant, don't drink. Homework assignment, look up this. It's going to be in your homework assignment. If you're pregnant, don't drink. Alcohol, it'll cause birth defects. If you're driving, don't drink. Abuse is when you drink too much. Alcoholism is the disorder of addiction. When does alcohol abuse become alcoholism? When the dependency on alcohol as it with causes, the person is so dependent on the alcohol that trying to quit causes withdrawal symptoms, and so they continue drinking, but as a result they are destroying their lives. They are failing in their responsibilities in their relationships to their friends, to their family, to themselves. Tobacco causes cancer. Is that a surprise? Is that a surprise? Not just the nicotine, is not just the smoke burning anything, but also all the chemicals that tobacco companies put in. And vaping has started to cause lung disease too. If you don't believe me, Google for popcorn lung. Let's do this. Popcorn lung. It's one of the causes of popcorn lung is vaping. So whoever made this, please don't sue me. It's for educational purposes. This is an artist representation of an X-ray finding of people who have vaped for a lot. And so they see this on the X-ray and they go, huh, popcorns. Hey, look, popcorn. So this is actual literal popcorn. Okay, so anyway, vaping causes that. So vaping is not perfectly healthy. Now, some proponents of vaping say at least it's better than smoking. So if you are a smoker, then vaping sounds like a step in the right direction. And I did say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Try to make one good decision today. And so that's true. But what should not be happening is people who don't smoke at all try vaping. Then vaping, instead of being a step down from smoking, becomes a gateway drug into smoking. Tobacco has this problem. You can pause. Tobacco has this problem. Secondhand smoke. So the people around you, around the smoker, every time a smoker smokes one cigarette, the people around them smoke a half. The benefits of quitting tobacco here. Pause and then move on. Okay. How do you quit smoking? Well, how do you quit anything? First, get over the denial. Once you are clear of the denial, then reach out for help. People who try to help people who are addicted before they leave the denial is only causing the addicted person to run away. You try to make somebody who's addicted stop their addiction, but they are still in denial. They will deny you, they will fight you, they will hide from you, they will cheat on you, they will sneak their addiction, they will run away. You're pushing the person away. Only when the person is ready to quit, when they finally left denial, are they going to finally sit still and listen to what you have to say, receive the help you are trying to give them. Once they are ready and they have been detoxed, then they are available for therapy groups. Main takeaways. Anyway, that is the lecture for drugs and addiction. You've heard enough for me to attempt the homework and the quiz. Good luck on that, and you'll hear from me next week.